One of the largest media publications in Germany has just revealed exactly why Volkswagen isn't meeting its EV targets, why it says customers don't want EVs. In fact, it discloses probably a secret that the Volkswagen Group does not want you to know. They want this hidden. They are never going to admit to this, but this is the truth. Hello, my friends. Welcome to the channel. I'm Sam Evans. You're watching the Electric Viking. It's great to see you. We're glad to have you with us anyway. Now, guys, I personally have purchased an electric car, and yeah, it's not a Volkswagen EV. Volkswagen don't sell electric cars here in Australia. They've been saying they would for years, but they haven't done it. And the reason, I think, is very, very clear. Many people have said this, alluded to this, but it's taken a while before the German media for them to actually start pointing out what is really happening. Now, if you want to know what car I bought, it's an Xpeng G6. I've placed an order, and I'll put a link in the description if you'd like to place an order as well. If you're here in Australia, or even just a pre-order, you can do so. It is refundable. $1,000 is refundable. And to be honest, you can buy one of these cars, right? It's a similar price to, say, something like a Volkswagen Tiguan R, right? Actually, the Xpeng G6 comes with a better specification level of features, but similar performance to that vehicle, and actually it's cheaper. So this is what the Volkswagen Group have to compete with. Their rivals are better than they are. I mean, the software, that's the thing. Software. The Volkswagen Group, right, have had a nightmare with software. They literally fired thousands of staff in Germany in their software team because the software they were putting in their EVs, everyone's complaining about it. They're saying it sucks. They're saying it was terrible. The CARIAD software division was a nightmare. The CEO or the director in charge of that software division was fired, and then the Volkswagen Group purchased a software company in China for, I believe, $2 billion. And then they purchased a stake in the Xpeng brand, right? They now own part of Xpeng in China, and they now plan on using Xpeng software, including their autonomous driving software, in their future electric cars. They've made that very public. That's not me making that up. That's public information you can find yourself. If you don't believe me, you can do a quick Google search and you'll discover it pretty quickly. Even Audi are doing the same thing. Even Audi now, they're going to use platforms from Chinese government-owned SAIC Motors. So the Volkswagen Group obviously are in trouble. Even Elon Musk pointed this out. The Volkswagen Group said they're going to invest $5 billion into Rivian, and initially they've invested $1 billion, and then the following $4 billion would come later. And then Elon Musk responded saying, where will they get the money? Now, what Musk is referring to is the fact that the Volkswagen Group have $190 billion in debt, and their sales aren't growing. In fact, the Volkswagen Group have admitted their sales will decline by around 10% this year to probably about 8.5 million, but their production capacity is 14 million. So they're shutting down 2 factories in Germany and firing thousands of people in Germany. Now, the unions are furious, of course, utterly livid. Staff are angry, but keep in mind a significant percentage of the staff at German car factories at the Volkswagen Group have clauses in their contracts that mean they cannot be fired. So that means the Volkswagen Group can't fire the underperforming employees, which I'm sure there are some, and keep the good ones. It has to just fire people who don't have that clause in their contract. The plan of politicians and the car industry seemed unmistakable, said German publication Wosch. The electric car should conquer the market as quickly as possible. In some regions of the world, the change will happen faster than others, like China, Norway, Sweden. But fundamentally, the battery car should only know one direction in terms of sales, upwards. Electric cars are not selling as hoped, says this German publication, and new data shows that this is exactly what car manufacturers like Volkswagen want. They are short on cash, so they prefer to sell high gross margin combustion engines because they make a loss on the electric cars they sell. So actually, Volkswagen is creating a false narrative. So is Toyota. So is every car company in the world saying EV sales are slowing, the demand is not there. That's not actually true. The truth is they're creating a narrative that they want you to believe because they know that will actually affect EV sales. If you tell everyone no one wants EVs, they'll stop buying them. So they're doing this intentionally because they don't make a profit on the sales of electric cars. Now, of course, in the United States, there's more to it than this. In the United States, there is a very large oil industry, and the US definitely wants to some degree, protect that oil industry, but that's for a separate video. Now, where this transformation is being decided is in car dealerships. Things have often been going in the opposite direction since the beginning of the year, says Germany. In many European countries, a decline in the market share of electric cars is being observed. Share of electric cars. Progress in electromobility is stalling, said Axel Priest, car expert at the management consultancy EY in July. In Germany, 20% fewer purely electric cars were sold in the first 7 months than the first 7 months of last year. Now, of course, there has been the eradication of subsidies. That's affecting purchase decisions. But there's a little bit more to it than that. Car managers are contrite and are demanding, like Volkswagen boss Oliver Blume, temporary purchase bonuses or tax relief to get sales going again. But if you take a closer look, it turns out that the slump in electric cars is not as dramatic for manufacturers as it seems, or as they would like you to believe. What's more, the slump is not just fate. It's following a pre-written script, which was written by car manufacturers. The story goes like this, says Walsh. The car companies are meeting the EU's CO2 targets with the mix of combustion engines and hybrids and EVs that they currently sell. They don't need to sell more EVs for the first time ever. So they're not, intentionally. That's why in recent months they have turned to another goal that they consider to be at least as important, making a profit. Many volume car manufacturers are having great difficulty achieving the announced return targets. That basically what they're doing is they're saying, well, we thought we could reduce costs of electric car sale on our development of EVs, but we haven't been able to. They're still costing us way more to manufacture than internal combustion. Of course, the key reason being they still don't mass produce enough of them. I mean, the vast majority of the Volkswagen Group's vehicles are internal combustion. So they're set up to mass manufacture one type of product. The other product, they're not set up to mass manufacture. Therefore, they obviously don't make a profit from that product. Volkswagen Group are boosting sales of petrol and diesel cars with low prices because they make significantly more money, says Germany, with those than with EVs. Climate protection? Well, that can come later. Only when the EU's CO2 targets continue to fall in the coming years will manufacturers actually be forced to sell more electric cars. Basically, they're hitting the bare minimum, right? Their targets are at a certain point. If they go beyond that, they make a loss. They sell more EVs, they go beyond that, and it's good for us, right? But they make a loss. Now, if they go underneath the CO2 target, then they've got to pay for carbon credits from a company like Tesla. And that's how Tesla have been profiting to the tune of about $1.3 billion every year by selling carbon credits to car companies. So the goal of these car companies is to not have to buy those carbon credits, but only just get to the point where they don't have to actually buy carbon credits. Anywhere above that point, they sell more EVs and they just make a loss. And they don't want to do that. They're a business after all. Insiders from the automotive industry openly admit that this is not just crude speculation. In the coming months and years, as a senior Volkswagen manager has explained publicly, the traditional car companies with their combustion engine portfolio will have only one last chance to improve their returns, especially with gasoline engines. Even if the range of electric models is increased in parallel, decisions will probably be made quite pragmatically for a while in favor of cash versus caring about climate protection. I mean, ultimately, like I said, Volkswagen Group sees themselves as a business. They don't want to close these factories in Germany, but they believe they have no choice. So it's about pragmatism, not about anything else. At Volkswagen, profitability is currently the central issue. The company have said they're in trouble. The CFO, the Chief Financial Officer, has said the roof is on fire. That's a direct quote. The roof is on fire. We are in a crisis. We have only 1 or 2 years left to save the company. Research by Handelsblatt shows that according to Handelsblatt, the Volkswagen brand is 2 to 3 billion euros so around about $4 billion US short of achieving its annual targets. That's a big shortfall. When presenting the half-year figures, CEO Oliver Bloom said that at Volkswagen, everything was currently about costs, costs, costs. So even he himself has admitted to this. The leeway given car manufacturers is that in recent years, they've been able to sell more purely electric cars than Brussels originally expected. That means they have the ability now to scale back. Because electric cars can be rated as having zero CO2 emissions under EU law, they significantly reduce the manufacturer's average greenhouse gas emissions. That is why, according to a study by the environmental organisation ICCT, in 2023, all manufacturers had average CO2 emissions of their cars sold in the EU below the legal limit. That's the first year that's actually happened. This situation is likely to be similar this year. Stricter upper limits will not apply until next year, 2025. So then the narrative from the Volkswagen Group will likely change. Oh, no. People want EVs. Oh, we've got huge demand for electric cars. Now, you're probably aware of the fact that last year, in the middle of last year, the Volkswagen Group said that they had nearly 1 million pre-orders and enough demand for their EVs for 2 years of production. Now, apparently all those orders have disappeared. I mentioned this on the channel. Clearly, Volkswagen just made that up. It was a narrative that suited the agenda they were selling to the public. Manufacturers have a number of options to work around the CO2 emissions targets in 2025. The example of Volkswagen shows 12% of the Wolfsburg-based company sales in Europe last year were purely electric. According to the European Environmental Organisation Transport and Environment, T&E, this figure would have to be around 24% in 2025 to meet their targets. However, unfortunately, Volkswagen does not have to double its sales of EVs from now on. The company can do what its competitor Toyota has been doing for years, says the author of this study. What does this mean? Well, they can pool their taxes with manufacturers that have low CO2 emissions. If it pools with Volvo, Volkswagen's share of electric cars only have to rise to 19%. If it does a deal with Tesla, as it has done in the past, it would only have to rise to 15%, which is only a small increase. According to calculations by T&E, Ford and Mercedes could also achieve their targets more easily through pooling with companies like Tesla. Stellantis has done this for years. And Stellantis, in fact, absolutely hate this. They have publicly said they don't want to pay Tesla any more money and they're sick of it. Because the EU CO2 limits will have temporarily lost their terror, manufacturers can now focus on profits, which is what I said before. That's what they're doing. Quote from the CEO, "Our focus is profits, profits, and profits." What is striking here is that the further manufacturers are from their profit targets, the more they promote the sale of combustion engines. And that's exactly what's happening this year. Toyota's sales have fallen for 6 straight months in a row. The Volkswagen Group's profits have declined sharply, and both companies are focusing on what? Not EVs, but profits. With a return on sales of 9.6% in the first half of the year, BMW is in the upper range of the promised corridor, which is 8 to 10% for profits. Mercedes-Benz is in the range as well, at 10%. Both manufacturers are trying to get their electric cars on the road by charging relatively lower prices, as the Centre Automotive Research found in Bochum. It is noticeable that the German premium car manufacturers like BMW are making the price range between the electric car and combustion engines rather small, said a recent study. For the study, the actual sales prices of 20 electric cars were compared with the actual sales prices of comparable combustion engines. On average, the electric cars were 21% more expensive in Europe. However, the values of the individual manufacturers vary extremely widely. BMW was content with an increase of 6% for their electric model iX1 and 8% for the i4 compared to the comparable models from the combustion engines. BMW is also successful, or has been one of the most successful car companies in the world at growing their EV sales this year. So when customers have a choice at BMW to buy an EV or internal combustion car, and the EV is only a little bit more expensive, they are, in many cases, buying the EV. At Mercedes, the differences are much higher, between 7 to 15%, and Mercedes EV sales this year have slowed. The picture is different for volume manufacturers such as Volkswagen and Stellantis. The Volkswagen ID3 is a whopping 40% more expensive than a comparable Volkswagen Golf. 40%. And the gap between the ID5 and the Volkswagen Passat is enormous. It's 41%. The electric Opel Corsa and the electric version of the Peugeot 208 are even more shocking. An average price premium of 80% compared to their combustion engine siblings. Now, in China, EVs are about on par. On average, they're around 5 to 10% more expensive, but in some cases, like the new Xpeng Mona, they're no more expensive. That electric vehicle is the same size as the Tesla Model 3, has similar range, and starts at only $16,800. The reason for the pricing is obvious. Volkswagen and Stellantis urgently need to make money, particularly when they know disruption is knocking on their door. Therefore, they do not want to sell electric cars that do not have a large or even negative return. In fact, most experts say that Volkswagen Group and Stellantis make a loss on every EV they sell. For the Volkswagen brand, the return on sales fell to 2.3% in the first half of the year. 2.3%. That is the lowest it's been in decades. But the CEO, Oliver Bloom's target is 6.5%, which they are miles away from hitting. Returns are also declining sharply at Stellantis. But the demands of CEO Carlos Tavares has promised a definitely double-digit return on sales for 2024. That, of course, is not happening. According to T&E, car manufacturers will have to sell more electric vehicles from 2025 onwards in order to meet the legal CO2 requirements, but very importantly, not before. Not before as in this year, 2024. So this year, the narrative of no one wants EVs is what they're selling. Until 2025, manufacturers are therefore pursuing the goal of maximizing profits with combustion engines. If they want to sell electric cars at all, then often only in the most expensive version, according to T&E. So they try and sell the more expensive versions of EVs, or they put a huge premium markup on the price of an EV versus internal combustion. It is above all these factors are slowing down the sale of EVs. It's not the demand. It's actually the intention of these manufacturers. The car manufacturers' tactics are not without danger. It is quite possible they will look back and be annoyed that others have divided up the market among themselves, says the German media. The fact that the sales crisis is partly self-inflicted gives hope that sales will pick up again if the manufacturers want them to at some point. Or they could just wait for BYD and all the other Chinese car manufacturers who are building factories in and around Europe and plan to flood the market. Disruption may be the only thing that will force them to innovate, but by then, it might just be too late. Thanks for watching.